Hi everyone, welcome to our Camworth event. This is the second in a series of webinars focused on license optimization. This time looking at service provider businesses and how they're leveraging a specific Cisco buying program called Service Provider Network Agreements, SPNAs, can provide a huge cost-saving benefit for customers and provide operational efficiencies for these service providers disrupting the UK market today. My name is Will Lawrence Mills. I'm the service provider consultant here at Camworth. Firstly, from me, just a massive thank you for everyone who's viewing this event today. We've got some really great content lined up for you. We're very lucky to have two guest speakers joining us today. It's a slightly different format to the last event we hosted about enterprise agreements. The difference being this time we're joined by Chris Beswick. Chris is the network solutions architect for M247. M247 are a Manchester-based service provider who have recently gone live on one of these Cisco SPNA agreements. Chris is here to talk about their journey with Camworth, some of the challenges they were facing as a Cisco customer, and how SPNA has helped their business. So really excited to have a live customer give a first-hand experience of SPNA. We're also joined by Tom Fernandez from Cisco. Tom is the head of Cisco software sales within the EMEA Service Provider business unit. Tom is here to give a great overview of the Cisco SPNA buying program, why Cisco decided to introduce this program, and how it's helping their clients. So Chris, Tom, great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
So to kick things off, Tom, I think if we start from the Cisco perspective, what are service provider network agreements? Why did Cisco introduce it as a buying program and how does it work? And I'm hoping we can go for a bit of an overview with you today.
Thanks, Will. So yes, today I am going to give you an overview of our software buying program, SPNA at Cisco, give you an overview as to why, what can be included, as well as some of the benefits that we can produce out of an SPNA. So first of all, why really is software and software management for most of our customers is becoming more and more complex. More and more of our software is becoming subscription, SaaS, term-based software. They all have lots of end dates, lots of separate renewal conversations, and it can be quite complex. So what we look to do with a SPNA is enable ease of management, reduce that life cycle cost for our customers, particularly when our customers want to refresh into next generation products. At the same time, also look to reduce that software wastage by being able to reutilize some of the existing licensing that you have, and to make compliance overall, which is also sometimes a critical feature, easier to manage and ensure. So, Will, if we can move to the next slide, please, to give everyone an overview of what we can put in the SPNA. I'll focus your attention to the bottom four circles. It really is an SPNA for our service provider technology, specific technology. So when we're looking at the cable space or the mobility space, 2, 3, 4, 5G, when we're looking at the SP routing space, in our case, looking at transport, core and edge networks, or then the automation software, which spans across the whole network and looks to automate the network through various different products. That's really what we mean when we're talking to what can be inputted into an SPNA and sold as part of an SPNA. So if we can move to the next slide, what are some of the reasons why this would be a good approach and some of the complexities that our customers are seeing? In terms of software consumption, typically our customers have been purchasing pay-as-you-go. Now, that can be very flexible for our customers and still a very valid approach, but that can create lost economy of scale. As I've previously mentioned, there is a complex renewal process. If you're purchasing a license every month for the next 12 months, then potentially you have 12 renewal conversations in the future, which ideally you would like to consolidate. Most of our customers really care about CapEx spend and wish to ensure as much CapEx spend as possible. So they're always looking to move from OpEx to CapEx spend. And pricing is, like anywhere, always subject to inflation. So how can we protect our customers against that? At the same time, while scaling the products, standardizing the value of the hardware, particularly being able to utilize that software when the hardware might become obsolete. And ultimately, what we're looking to do is put this into an SPNA software buying program that will make software easy to buy, consume, and manage. So if we can move to the next slide, just to give everyone an excuse me, an overview. So what we typically have today, and if we just build to the next one, please, Will, is we have our customers that have bought software and pre-deployed software. Now, that software takes a while to deploy. We might initially have customers buying an initial quantity, but not everything can be rolled out all at once, and it takes a deployment plan and a period of time to deploy that. Typically as well, our customers on a software support perspective have to classify that spend as OPEX, which normally is not something our customers look to do. They would prefer to capitalize the spend of the software. And with the existing software in the past, it's been tied to the hardware. That gives limited flexibility in terms of sometimes the software might be up to date and current and able to be reused, but because it's in the past, it's been tied to the hardware. Then if you decommission hardware, you're decommissioning software. And if you, we're also at the same time making that complex renewal management situation go forward. So if we then move to the next slide, we have stranded value. There's the stranded value of you really having that licensing there, but you're not able to deploy it, you're not able to reutilize it. And so how can we take all of these complex situations and with the SPNA move it into something beneficial? So what we will do in an SPNA is if you have a deployment plan, a rollout or refresh plan, we will price the commercials based on that rollout plan. So you might decide to deploy 100 licenses in year two, or sorry, in year one. So we would price that for the 3-year term of an SPNA, but then there's another 100 licenses you plan to deploy in year two. So that would be priced for 2 years of the SPNA and so forth in the final year. Critically as well in the SPNA, we will fix the net price of the software for the full term of the SPNA agreement, which then also provides predictability moving forward. If we can move to the next build, please, Will. We do embed software support within the SPNAs as well. Now, typically in the past, this has been the major element that our customers have to classify as OPEX. But when we embed that within the product, when we embed that within the SPNA, then some of our customers in the past have been able to actually capitalize that spend. So a major benefit there. And then obviously, as I've mentioned, we have co-termination of licensing. So even if your rollout plan is 100 licenses a year over 3 years, they will have all the same end date. But critically, if you ever overconsume on those 300 licenses and grow, all of that will have the same end date as well. And that overconsumption is managed by the true forward mechanism, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail in the next coming slides. The other key benefit of the SPNA is the reuse of the licenses, the portability of the licenses. So we completely disaggregate the software from the hardware. That now means that today, if you're decommissioning a box and you then wish to deploy a new box, that license might be perfectly valid, and that license might be able to be reused in the new hardware. So we enable that flexibility within the SPNA. Obviously, the major benefit there would be a reduced cost of refresh or new deployments by utilizing existing install base on the software. So, well, if we can move to the next slide, what I really wanted to do, and we can build this out, is give everyone an example of the true forward mechanism, because this is really beneficial. So here what we have is a customer that has initially purchased 11,400 units. In our case, we're talking licenses. Now, that's the purchase. That's what's currently being used in the first year, 2023 and 2024 as well. So therefore, that is the build amount that we will provide, and that's a flat fee to our customers on a yearly basis. If we build this out a little bit more, Will, that'd be great, all the way through, please. So now what we have is in 2025, our customers actually need to overconsume the licenses. So in 2025, they grow by an additional 1,400 licenses. There is zero cost to those licenses in 2025. We, as Cisco, will not retroactively charge for overconsumed software in the year that that software is activated. The invoice and the charge will come in 26 and will be for 26 and 27. But that year of deployment is zero cost. The same again in 2026. You'll see that there's even more additional growth in 26. Again, zero cost of those licenses in 26, but the invoicing for 27 will factor those in. Now, when you add that to the fixed net price of the SPNA, then this makes growth and rollout much more predictable for our customers. As we move forward, the customer knows exactly what they're going to pay per license. They also know exactly when that invoice is coming, and typically there's anywhere up to 12 months of pre-warning for that to come. So if we move to the next slide, please, Will. Overall, software management, we want to be able to have all of our licensing easier to manage within the inventory, reusable. We want to ensure that all compliance is readily available, and once in an SPNA, then all software is by default compliant, which makes that management easier. Order management is easy as well at this point, because once you have an SPNA and you require more licensing, no longer do we have to go through our PO process and anything along those lines. Now it's a case of access the SPNA, download and start utilizing more licensing, and the true forward mechanism that I've just run through will really pick that up and include that in the SPNA. And therefore, it's really easy to deploy the new licensing. It's really easy to reutilize existing licensing in new hardware, overall simplifying everything. So if we can move to the next slide, Will. Finally, I'll end with, so overall, let me give you an overview of what it is. It's a 3 or a 5 year agreement. So we have to, call out there is a commitment requirement there, and that commitment requirement does come with an upfront purchase order for the 3 to 5 years or 5 years, but can be annual invoicing and a flat annual fee on that invoicing. It offers software consumption for a defined scope based on the dollar amount, but then, as mentioned, you can grow on that. I've touched on the annual billing. There are program terms that need to be signed. So that will be an agreement between Cisco and our end customer that we would need to sign, but it's suitable for one product, one subsidiary within a customer, or multiple products and enterprise-wide within a customer. So it can be flexible. And as I've previously mentioned, on renewal, there's one conversation, all licensing, one conversation to renew everything. So that's my overview of SPNA. Will, let me hand back to you.
Tom, brilliant. Thanks for that. Really appreciate that. That was actually really detailed analysis there. So thank you so much for going through it. Right, the next part of our event today is really talking about the client experience now with Chris. So Chris, I think before we get started, it'd be really good to get an overview of M247. So if you can tell us a little bit about your business and the service provider, your relationship with Cisco and the type of offerings you provide.
Yeah, sure. So we are an international ISP, MSP with offices based in London, Manchester and Bucharest. We provide services ranging from, your typical connectivity-based solutions such as direct internet access, MPLS and SD-WAN over fiber and radio access networks, to public, private and hybrid cloud solutions that use IaaS, BUAS and DRaaS. We also offer security and cyber solutions, including hosted firewalls, along with voice services such as unified comms, Teams direct routing, hosted telephony, and contact center as a service. The international arm of M247 provides colo connectivity and VPS platform services in over 25 different countries. And I think in 70 of the world's most strategically important locations, from the west coast of the United States through to Europe, Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Australia.
Gosh. And then with Cisco, how much of that is Cisco powered, and where are you with sort of Cisco as a strategic vendor for M247?
So we're going through a phase of network transformation at the moment, whereby we're refreshing an awful lot of legacy hardware. And this is a program of works that we're undertaking both within the UK network and the international network as well. The entirety of the UK network from the ground up has been redesigned using Cisco's carrier grade routing platforms, mainly the NCS product portfolio. So yeah, that's a program of works that will continue over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. So with the NCS, I know obviously having worked with you already that you're using, or you were using, the flexible consumption license as part of that. What were some of the challenges that M247 were facing with that sort of licensing model and sort of leading up to the SPNA conversation that we had with you?
Yeah, I think primarily it was the upfront cost that we were struggling with. The NCS platform, you're tied into a minimum number of right to use and software innovation access licenses. And it's actually different on a per platform model as well within that product portfolio. And certainly within 10 gigabit licenses, in many scenarios, we found ourselves left with a pool of licenses that we simply didn't need right now. So, from a commercial point of view, it's not really an efficient purchasing model. I think secondary to that as well is the management and administration of those licenses, which is something that Tom alluded to previously. All of the different contract end dates for those SIA licenses. You may find yourself, ordering a certain number of routers across a number of purchase orders, and each of those batch of routers will have different contract termination end dates for those software innovation access licenses. But as your network continues to grow, you may find yourself in a situation where you've got a fully paid up router that's live in the network. It's got a number of SIA licenses already purchased. And certainly we found this with the 100 gig licenses. When you come to grow the network, you're going to have to buy more additional licenses in that flexible consumption model to meet that demand for growth. That then means you need to buy additional SIA licenses. So over a period of years, you can find yourself in a situation where you've got hundreds of devices covering thousands of ports with different bandwidths and features, all requiring different SIA contracts with different end dates.
Yeah, and I think from speaking to you, you were just coming up to that first point of, okay, this is an issue that we're aware of. We probably need to do something now before we start hitting some of those termination dates and sort of, uncovering this potential complexity.
Absolutely, yeah, it's getting to a point, previous to our relationship, where we were really starting to worry about how we were going to manage this. And I think as well, getting the buy-in from the business, it's not something that's consistent. You're constantly having to go back to the business to ask for additional funds to renew these licenses, which puts additional strain on team members, on business, on budgets, on forecasting,
yep.
All of which makes the administration of the network that much more difficult.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So moving forward to kind of post SPNA now, what have been some of the business benefits for M247, especially with that transformation project you mentioned? How has it helped that as well when you talk about standardizing over maybe a multi-year program of works like that?
Yeah, I mean, primarily it's been the cost savings that have been of benefit. You know, we can now purchase that hardware without being tied into a minimum number of licenses. So we can consume those licenses as and when we need them. So it means that, you know, we can forecast the spending and the budgets for projects and network growth a lot better. We've got that fixed commercial agreement in place for the term of the SPNA contract. And thanks to that price protection that we're realizing, I think we've realized the cost saving of somewhere in the region of about 30% using the SPNA model versus the traditional licensing model and that renewal over those 3 or 5 or 7 year terms that you can get with the CL licensing. Obviously, we've got the simplified software license management as well, so we don't need to worry about, you know, when does that particular port on that particular router, when does the CA contract expire for that? Do we need to document that? Do we need to continuously audit it? How do we keep that life cycle in play? And I think as well that capability to utilize the 10 gigabit licenses that we have in our pool to fund the purchase of additional overconsumption in 100 gigabit ports, so that when we do the true forward, we can actually utilize 10 gigabit ports to fund that additional purchase. And again, as Tom mentioned in his presentation, it's that peace of mind with the license portability. If we were to upgrade from, I don't know, an NCS 5500 to a 5700, for example, we've got that peace of mind that that license can be put back into the pool and consumed again on a different platform.
Yep. No, that's really interesting. And you're right, I think cost benefit is probably the biggest factor in a 30%, you know, cost saving being demonstrated over 5 years. You know, I guess that's the main reason you get something like this approved, because I guess at the end of the day, it probably goes down to cost, and all the others are sort of pluses.
I mean, we talk regularly about freeing engineers' time up to focus on other things, and that has a certain, you know, finance value attached to it, but it's not necessarily tangible. You know, it's not something that we can realize immediately. So saying let's reduce the admin overhead to free up engineers to do additional work, that's not always something that works well within a business case. But when you can see a 30% reduction on licenses over a 5-year term, which is what we've done, then that's something tangible that the business can really buy into.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we've talked a lot about the cost benefits there then. So how has it affected your or the network teams day to day? And when I talk about, you know, trying to standardize as well, how's that affected that?
I think it's made things a lot easier. It's less complex. Prior to onboarding with SPNA, I would find myself being drawn into conversations, meetings, where engineers are worried about, you know, what's the minimum RTU and CA license count for this particular device. You know, that complexity, that worry is, we don't have that anymore. It's a simple case of, well, just buy the hardware that you need to fit that use case, and we'll draw the licenses down as and when we need to meet that particular requirement. Again, we don't need to worry about those multiple contract end dates. We've got that one single contract covering all licenses, whether it's the licenses that we originally took out at the start of the contract, or whether it's licenses that we now draw down that have, you know, pushed us into that overconsumption that we basically sort out at the true forward of the anniversary of each year. Yeah, again, it does free up the team to work on other things as well without having to worry about those licensing issues.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Now, when we first started talking, our first engagement was really doing quite an in-depth license analysis of your iOS XR software estate. That's normally sort of the first step on any engagement when we look at SPNAs, and we put together, I'd say, quite a concise audit for M247 to look at, right, this is a snapshot. Where are you today with this sort of license estate? Let's go into that audit now then. So what were some of the benefits you found from Camworth putting together that audit, and what did we sort of find out as part of that process?
Yeah, so this was actually of huge benefit. A previous supplier that we've been using to procure the NCS devices and the licensing hadn't been assigning them correctly, and the audit process uncovered these issues, and we found, or Camworth found, that, you know, there were missing or sometimes even duplicate licenses within our smart account, and Camworth, you know, yourself and Richard, liaised directly with Cisco on our behalf to resolve these issues and resolve these inconsistencies to ensure that all of these licenses were correctly allocated in our smart account. Now, we didn't have the knowledge or the skills first of all analyze and gather that information, and secondly, we wouldn't know who to speak to within Cisco to, to resolve those issues.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear, actually. But that's a big part, especially with Richard Johnson, who's the head of our sort of software division. It's a big part of his role is firstly looking at that license estate today, and then also we look at that true consumption as well. But like you said, is getting the house in order before then we start the SPNA conversation, so we know everything we're talking about is sort of correctly provisioned.
Yeah.
So I guess with Camworth as well, we're still fairly new partner for M247, specifically around the Cisco SPNA. How did you find working with us? What did you find that we did well? What did you find we could have done better? Because that's also really important as part of that engagement.
So I've always found Camworth to be extremely professional and efficient. I think you guys provide a much needed value add, which for me isn't something you really think about or realize you need until you see it in action. And I think since the very beginning, Camworth have proven themselves to be a partner who we can trust. You guys show great initiative and always do what I feel is in the best interest of the customer. And I think so far, there's very little that I can say in terms of, this is where I think you need to improve. This is what you're doing badly. This is what I think everything so far has been exceptional, really good.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, that's great to hear. Thank you, Chris. Really kind words. And like I said, I think it's always good to keep that dialogue open as well. And I think, like you said, it's a trusted partnership, really. So, as we kind of mature and as the partnership grows, it's understanding, right, where can that improve or where can we, be better in some areas. Is always good feedback to have. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
Great. Well, I think now is probably a good time to bring up my slides and probably talk a bit more about Camworth, and I think specifically our role in SPNA and how we sort of approach these. So Camworth, we're very much a service-led organization, and what I mean by that is it's a very consultative approach we like to take with our clients. So it's really getting into the bloodstream of an organization, understanding what those business objectives or business goals are before we start having that technology conversation, and that allows us really to do two things. I think firstly, technology is then the enabler for the business and to match those goals, which I think is really important when we start having these kind of buying program conversations with clients. And secondly, you have that traceability from the technology solution all the way up to those business objectives, which again, in the world we are now, is really critical. We're one of Cisco's next generation partners in the UK. What that means is we get a lot of support from Cisco as the vendor in specific areas, and software buying programs being one of those where we built a really strong practice within the organization where we can focus at license optimization and really adding a lot of value to customers like M247 in the software buying programs. Specifically on service providers, since day dot of incorporation of Camworth, we've been focused around helping service providers and really understanding the uniqueness of their organizations when compared to, I'd say, the enterprise type customers. I myself, as sort of the service provider lead within the business, I work with a sort of a wide variety of, MVNOs, altnets, sort of the hosting providers as well, fixed wireless access. So a wide range of operators to really understand how we can help, you grow your own businesses and your sort of nuances, which aren't really there in the enterprise world. Out of the three SPNAs to date, Camworth have completed 2 of them. So really leading this initiative in the UK, I might add, and bringing the SPNAs into the tier 2 disruptor market. We're one of 6 advanced service provider partners from Cisco, and again, that just highlights that practice within the business to specialize within service provider and really being able to add, tangible value within those sort of licensing areas as well. We specialize in delivering very complex network agreements, so that is enterprise agreements, but also SPNA agreements. I think the big message from Chris and Tom earlier is around simplification and consolidation and making life easier in essence. And naturally, I think with that comes a lot of sort of upfront complex analysis, providing business cases, really writing these type of agreements so they're the sort of the best possible scenario for customers. In terms of lifecycle services. This is something that Camworth offers alongside these sort of SPNA agreements and Cisco licensing agreements. We talked about it already, but the start of these type of engagements is always that life cycle analysis. You know, we really have a deep, complex analysis of your licensing estate, and there's sort of two data points that we take from that. So one, we look at all the licenses that a customer has purchased from Cisco. So that's a report direct from Cisco to give us an outline of what licenses has the customer purchased. Then we look at the smart accounts. That is the portal that you use to provision and manage your Cisco smart licensing. And the reason we look at both those data sets is it may be a case, and in Chris's example there, that what you've received from Cisco may not necessarily be what you've purchased from Cisco. So we start really by getting the house in order, looking exactly what you have got and what you should got, and make any sort of changes on your behalf to correct any areas where there's miscellaneous licenses, etc. We then really look at the true consumption. I think that's a really part of this conversation, and writing an enterprise agreement, like we talked about before. It may not be necessarily what you've got today, but it's actually what is the true license consumption that a business has, and that may change over time as well. So it's really sitting down with you and looking at, okay, what license are we actually consuming? And part of that role is getting the smart account provisioned properly and talking to all the devices and showing the consumption. But then it's also a conversation with you of, okay, what does that future look like over the next 3 or 5 years? And a lot of the time, people don't really have those conversations. So it's really trying to push that future growth conversation when we look at SPNAs. We're also here to talk about a lot of the onboarding services that Camworth can offer post SPNA, and that's a big part of our role as a partner in this engagement. We're very much involved in the writing of the SPNA agreements, but really here to ensure that how that SPNA goes live meets the expectation and the agreement that was made between Cisco and the customer. And we're very, I'd say, specialists in understanding the different teams within Cisco to make sure that's properly set up and you're getting the most and the correct value from this type of agreement. As part of the onboarding as well, we also work, with yourselves as well. So working with the individual kind of stakeholders within the business. This is a new buying model. There are a few changes to the process. So it's making sure that everyone is comfortable with those changes and have the right sort of education to do sort of the day-to-day running. And then lastly, I guess True4 was mentioned as well. So, we provide sort of quarterly, annual reviews as part of the SPNA agreement, really alongside the term of the contract, to make sure that when you come up to these True Forward events, or we even do quarterly, that you're getting the most value from the SPNA. And when we look at that annual anniversary payment, that is built in a way that you get the most cost-effective renewal, and it sort of meets how your business is changing over time. So I think when we talk about embarking on the SPNA process, we always start with that in-depth analysis of your IOSXR estate, which I mentioned in the previous slide. The output for this provides two things. So one is that very detailed report. There's a real good snapshot for a business of exactly where you are, what the license situation are, and any recommendations that we can complete on your behalf. But the other output of that, and mostly for Camworth, is the data and the output to provide your eligibility for the SPNA program. So the big role of the partner in this situation is putting forward that business case to Cisco based on that output of your licenses, and seek the approvals needed to get an SPNA deal from Cisco. SPNAs were originally designed for tier 1 operators and have quite a high value threshold attached as part of that sort of product. The role as a partner here is really building a business case to Cisco to get the necessary approvals to get an exemption under that threshold, and that's our role really in bringing this into the tier 2 operator market. The other business case that we provide, a part of that is slightly different objectives, but for the customer. So more importantly here, providing that detailed ROI analysis when we compare SPNA to a traditional model. So, what costs are coming down the road over the next 5 years for you as a customer if you didn't do anything, and then comparing that with, okay, what is the cost of doing a 5-year SPNA? And part of that is building this sort of renewal process of all the licenses and all the support you have coming up, and we can provide that sort of detailed analysis of, okay, what actually is the ROI of this, because we know that that's a really important thing to be able to demonstrate to the business if you're serious about going ahead with an SPNA. So I think if you'd like to know more about SPNAs and whether they could help your business, my contact details are up on that slide there. Please, feel free to reach out for me. From email is probably the best way. It'd be great to hear from you and whether an SPNA could be the right fit for you, or if we just want to go through that process and understand where you are on the smart account journey. Is the adoption there, and when may be a good time to look at an SPNA as a buying program for your technology solution? So I think that's probably all from the Camworth side of things. I just want to say a massive thank you to Tom and Chris. Look, really appreciate you taking so much time out of your day to go through what this program is, but also Chris, your own experience as well as a real customer and how that's benefited you. I think for people listening to this, that's really relevant. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.